Oh, hi, Barry. Hi, Dan. How are you guys doing?
Oh, fine.
Um, uh, so, uh, I was. Are you ready for this tavern trivia night? I've been thinking about some good questions for you. Like, for example, do you know where the Declaration of Independence was signed?
I know that. They signed it at the bottom. Here's a real brain teaser. Where are the kings and queens of England usually crowned?
I know. On their heads.
That was a little too easy.
Okay, Dan, do you have a good brain teaser for us?
I think so. What was the tallest building in colonial Philadelphia?
Oh, I think I know that. It must have been the library. Think of how many stories it had.
That's awful.
I wanted to ask you what a boxer's favorite drink is.
Punch? These are really trivial questions. They're really trivial
We've
questions.
been asked to do some music for the Colonial Market Fair tonight, so want to warm up a bit and get our drink ready?
Hey, first things first, before I sing in a tavern, I need a brew. I was hoping to get some Atwater's Dead Dog Scrumpy, but the new batch hasn't marinated quite enough yet, if you know what I mean.
No.
Yeah.
I've ordered some Charm City Meadworks strawberry ginger honey wine to drink in my mead cup.
Yum.
That sounds great.
Well, how about some Banbury Ale?
Where?
At the tavern night.
I would I were there.
Banbury Ale.
Where?
Out in cyberspace.
How do we get there? How do we get there?
Banbury Ale.
Banbury Ale. Where? At the tavern night, I would there. Banbury Ale. Where? At the tavern night, I would.
Out in cyberspace.
It sounded like a bit of a jumble to me. I don't know what's, I think this Zoom thing just allows one voice at a time. So
wouldn't you say that's kind of unfortunate?
Yeah, that is unfortunate. I don't know what we can do about it because I was hoping to show off our harmony. We've been practicing and doing it, but I would hope we could teleport to the same place.
I think I might have a technological solution. With this setup, I think I can sing all three parts of a round all at once. I will sing in honor of our own musical club.
Your musical club, here's long life and prosperity, may flourish with the sun so on to posterity. Your musical club, here's long life and prosperity, may flourish with us and so on to posterity.
To our musical club, here's long life and prosperity. May it flourish with us and so on to posterity. May concord and harmony ever abound, and divisions here only in our music be found. May the catch and the glass go about and about, and another succeed to the bottle that's out.
Very nice. Wow.
Huzzah!
How did you do that, Barry? I see there are three of you singing there.
Well, I've got a couple of chums. We were separated at birth.
Wow, they look just like you.
Yeah,
amazing.
We're identical twins. Mirror image twins, I should say. I'm a mirror image of him, and he's a mirror image of him, and so
Well,
on.
you know, I wanted to say what song I would really like to sing for our opening song. That wonderful song written by the Anacreontic Society. That was, you know, that club that was formed in London in 1766 and met in various taverns there. They progressive club. They eventually let women join, and they were dedicated to the famous Greek poet Anacreon. We consider our patron saint of wine, women, and song. And each meeting started with a concert. They supported musicians. Haydn visited them once. Then they'd
That was in
retire
London, right?
and sing together. And there was this club anthem sort of that they sung together. I wonder if we could get a recording of that we captured. Like, if it would be nice if we could sing together like we did last year when we sang at the fair. So I'm gonna try and bring that up.
Gone in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few songs of harmony sang, a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be. When this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute, no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
That's like singing together. Oh, hi, Margot.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, hi.
Welcome to and everyone out there, welcome to our virtual Colonial Market Tavern, brought to you by the Maryland Historical Society. We're so excited to have all of you this evening. I'm Margot Copera, the museum's public programs manager.
And I'm Alex Lostein, the museum's museum learning manager. And hi, Capriccio Club.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Steve, so that song sounded very familiar. Where have I heard that before?
You know, lots of songs have been written to that tune. It's such a convivial, spirited tune and has a nice range and people. And
A nice
one
one.
of the most famous. What are you saying, Barry?
You said it was a nice range. I'm not sure most of us would call that a nice range.
Well, it's a wonderful song to sing. And, you know, one of the most famous was Adams and Liberty. It was used as a campaign song in 1800. Can I sing you a verse of that?
Go right ahead.
Ye sons of Columbia, who bravely have fought for those rights which unstained from your sires had descended, may you long taste the blessings that your valor has brought, and your sons reap the soils that their fathers defended. Midst the reign of mild peace, may your nation increase with the glory of Rome and the wisdom of Greece. And ne'er shall the sons of Columbia be knaves, while the earth bears a plant or the sea rolls its waves.
Huzzah, Steve. That was a beautiful tune, great singing, and a nice sentiment too. How about if we do a couple of more jovial drinking songs before we start the trivia?
I'll drink to that. I have one in mind. It's
Go
called
ahead.
the Morning Glory. At the end of a day, I like a little drink to raise up me voice and sing. And an hour or two of a fine brown brew, and I'm ready for anything. At the Cross Keys Inn, there were sisters for the landlord's daughters fair. And every night when they put out the light, I would tiptoe up the stairs, singing, one for the morning glory, two for the earl I do, three for the man who will stand his ground, and four for the love of you, me girls, four for the love of you. Well, I got the call from the foreign shore to go and fight the foe. And I thought no more of the sisters four, but still I was sad to go. We sailed away on a ship, the Morning Glory was her name. And we'd all fall down when the rum went round, then we'd get up and start again, and singing, one for the Morning Glory, two for the Earl I do, three for the man who will stand his throne, and four for the love of you, me girls, four for the love of you. We bore once more for my native shore, farewell to the raging sea. And the cross keys in was a beckoning, and my heart was filled with glee. But there on the shore were the sisters four, with a bundle on each knee. There were three little girls and a bouncing boy, and they all looked just like him, singing, one for the Morning Glory, two for the Earl I do, three for the man who will stand his throne, and four for the love of you, me girls, four for the love of you.
Huzzah. Excellent.
Thank you.
Nice song. Well, Barry, do we have time for you to do a song for us?
I sure hope so. So my favorite tavern song for singing and drinking is called Fathom the Bowl, about the punch bowl. And sing along if you know it. Come, all you bold heroes who to this place have come, we'll sing in the praise of good brandy and rum. Come, lift up your glasses, good cheer is our goal. Give me the punch ladle, I'll fathom the bowl. I'll fathom the bowl, I'll fathom the bowl. Give me the punch ladle, I'll fathom the bowl. Now my father, he do lie in the depths of the sea, with no stone at his feet, but what matter, for he, there's a clear crystal fountain near England all. Give me the punch ladle, I'll fathom the bowl. I'll fathom the bowl, I'll fathom the bowl. Give me the punch ladle, I'll fathom the bowl.
Huzzah!
Yeah.
Good singing.
Well, we want to welcome everyone to empty their punch bowls tonight and enjoy the trivia and discussions. We have a question for the Capriccio Club. Justin in College Park asked, that singing club in London sounded interesting. Were there any clubs like that here in Maryland?
Yes, there are actually many clubs all through the colonies, and in fact, the oldest club in the country was a South River Club near Annapolis that was founded in late 1600s, 1700s. It's not quite clear. They were a meeting club. In terms of singing, there was a club called the Tuesday Club in Annapolis that became very notorious, and they had a wonderful secretary, Dr. Alexander Hamilton, the other Alexander Hamilton, and he kept some nice records of their clubs, and his handwritten journal with illustrations and talks about their processions and parades they did and music they played is actually held at the Maryland Historical Society Library and makes wonderful reading. And also there was an Anacreontic Society in Baltimore in the early 1800s, and they have the record book of the songs they sang at that Anacreontic Society. So those are three examples of Maryland clubs that are well known. And of course, in any tavern, you'll find people singing if you hang around a while. Any other questions?
We have one question that says, are there any songbooks that exist still, I believe?
Songbooks. Well, yeah, the Catch As Catch Can was published in the 1600s. It had the first collection of, that was actually a later one. There were Thomas Ravenscroft first collected rounds in the England. And in terms of colonial music, it's hard to find sources because a lot of people wrote down songs that they'd heard in England and places, but there's published music came more in the 1800s. It's a very popular thing. There's a lot of Baltimore publishers and Philadelphia publishers were publishing a lot of music then.
So a little after the colonial period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in their modern collections, that if they want to send a note in the chat, we might find an answer to their any specific questions.
Great. Well, we actually have to get started with the trivia and the party and the. But I want to thank you. I want to thank so much Sandy and Steve. Oh God, I can't talk. Steve, Dan, and Barry. We really enjoyed you all opening our tavern for us tonight.
Thanks for inviting
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Taverns in early America ranged from elegant to the mean and nasty.
They were called taverns, ordinaries, inns, public houses, basically all the same name for the same type of public space, serving as a center of socializing. Men gathered on a regular basis to discuss politics, to conduct business, argue, talk news, and just kind of grab a pint. A lot of the early discussions about the American Revolution were taking place at taverns.
They catered to local society's elite and travelers, most often offered meals and had 5 nighttime accommodations. And wow, I must be drinking the same thing Alex is. Most taverns offered nighttime accommodations for people and their horses. Colonial lawmakers regarded a tavern's primary obligation to provide adequate leave to travelers, and legislation also required each jurisdiction to have a tavern, even here in Maryland. They were well suited on main roads and were heavily governed by each colony with a series of laws and guided behavior, morality not being one of them. Colonists liked to drink, and most colonial towns and villages bragged about 2 types of public buildings, churches and taverns, with drinking houses being far more common than houses of worship. Fun fact, it's not part of the quiz, the Middletown Tavern in Annapolis, down at the dock, is one of America's 10 oldest operating taverns.
And when we try and think of why taverns are very, very popular, there are a couple of reasons. One, great meeting places. You can meet with travelers, but also we forget that water during the colonial times wasn't the safest thing to drink. What was safe to drink was alcohol, where the water was heated up, boiled, distilled, and the alcohol killed any bacteria that was in there. So they were safer to go to.
Okay, let's get to our rules and some information. The first thing, while we're waiting for the slide to come up, the first thing is that we ask you for our trivia night not to use any books or the internet. Let's just play fair. Also, your audio and video capabilities have been removed. And if you would like to engage with us, which some of you are already doing, please use the chat box. And if you have any questions for Alex and I, or for our couple other guests that we will have with us, use the question and answer or Q&A box at the bottom of your screen.
So there are going to be 4 thematic rounds. There are going to be 5 questions each round. And in between the rounds, we're going to have a living historian, besides me, who's going to pop up and kind of talk about just a colonial craft or colonial trade that they're experts in. A poll is going to pop up on the screen for the trivia question. After we read it, you just click what you think your answer is. It's going to we're going to tally up all the polls digitally, and then we're going to be able to see what the correct answer was, and we're going to tell you a little bit about why it's the correct answer.
So grab that pint and let's get to testing your knowledge about colonial history. Round 1, here we go.
All right. So colonial politics. First question is, where was the province of Maryland's first seat of government? Was it A, Baltimore, B, St. Mary City, C, Annapolis, or D, Cambridge?
All right, let's see how we did. Alex? Ooh.
The correct answer is B, St. Mary City. Interesting fact about St. Mary City is it was founded on March 27th, 1634, as the capital of Maryland. And it was the capital of Maryland for 61 years, but it was actually more of a settlement of convenience rather than a real town. It was easy to get to. It was on the water. And so they made it the capital. Later, the capital would move, but I'm not going to tell what that answer is. I'm not going to say what that is.
And for those of you out there who live in Maryland, please go to St. Mary City and take a look around. They're a great place, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and we love to be involved with them.
All right, so we all know about the famous Boston Tea Party, but Maryland actually had its own. So what was the name of the ship that was burned in Maryland's version of the Boston Tea Party? Was it A, the Eleanor, B, the Beaver, C, the Dartmouth, or D, the Peggy Stewart? All right, so we see that the answer's coming up. Interestingly, the Eleanor, the Beaver, and the Dartmouth were all the names of the ships during the Boston Tea Party. The Peggy Stewart was the name of the ship during the burning of the Peggy Stewart. It's an interesting kind of funny story. I mean, not funny for Anthony Stewart, but on October of 1774, the Peggy Stewart is pulling into the Annapolis Harbor. It has about 2,000 pounds of tea, 53 indentured servants, and many other goods on it. In order for the goods to come ashore, taxes had to be collected. And Anthony Stewart, the co-owner of the ship, he actually paid the taxes. But Maryland and many in Maryland had agreed to not pay the taxes on teas, the tax on teas. So there was a committee to try and figure out what to do with the ship. Some believe that they should, destroy the tea. Some believe that they should take away the ship. But a decision was made to actually burn the ship and the tea. And on October 19, 1774, Maryland had its own tea party with the burning of the Peggy Stewart. And you can kind of see a picture of it right there. All right, so question 3. 4 out of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were from Maryland. Who were they? A, Chase Carroll Howard Paca. B, Paca Chase Carroll Stone. C, Howard Tillman Chase Paca. And D, Chase Stone Paca or Smallwood. And the poll's going to pop up right now.
Ooh, that's a
tricky one.
Yeah, that's a little tricky. Alex wrote this question.
Yeah, I wasn't pulling any punches.
Ooh, close.
Okay, so we have Chase, Carroll, Howard, and Paca as the top one. Actually, this is the correct answer is B. And the one way you can know the correct answer is they teach us in schools. It's Paca chased Carroll with a stone. That's a good way to kind of remember who did it. Of the 56 signers, Paca, Chase, Carroll, and Stone were the signers. Howard was a commander during the Revolutionary War. Tillman was George Washington's aide-de-camp, and Smallwood was another commander during the American Revolution. All right, on to question 4. So, no major battle took place in Maryland, but where is the site of the largest clash in Maryland during the Revolutionary War? Again, a tricky one. You have to know your Maryland history, or you have to have driven by this area.
Or read the news. Was it in Frederick, St. Mary City, St. George's Island, or Baltimore?
I forgot to read those. I'll get it later on. And the correct answer is
very interesting.
St. George's Island. So this is way down on the Eastern Shore. On July 17, 1776, British forces who had escaped from Williamsburg attempted to land on the mainland of Maryland. Maryland's flying camp, the Eastern Shore, on the Eastern Shore, they under Captain Beale, they drove back the invading British forces, and they were trying to invade the mainland through St. George's Island, which is in St. Mary's County. No one knows exactly where it happened, but it happened on this island. One thing that's a kind of fun fact, or at least I think it's fun, but I am kind of a dork, is that the flying camp who defended, they start making their way up to New York, and a group of militiamen from Frederick come down to take hold of this area, and the people in St. Mary's City near St. George's Island actually hated the people from Frederick. They said that they were misbehaving, they were not cleaning up properly, and so they demanded that the people from Frederick go up north, and that Captain Beale actually come back down.
So actually, so most of you chose Frederick as the answer. So, and incidentally, just as a note, St. George's Island in Southern Maryland, in St. Mary's County on the Potomac, there is an ongoing excavation going to start through the Preservation Maryland, who recently received a grant for it. So from the American Battlefield Protection Program. So look out in the news for more information to come about that site and about our part that Maryland played in the war.
All right, so the last question in this round is, and again, a tricky one. What was the first city in Maryland to serve as a capital of the United States? Was it A, Baltimore, B, Elkton, C, Frederick, or D, Annapolis?
A lot of people do not realize this, right, Alex?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because you really have to know your Revolutionary War history to know this one. All right, most people, 68%, put Annapolis, but the correct answer is Baltimore. So this actually happens from December 20th, 1776 to February 27th, 1777, when the British were making their way closer to Philadelphia. The Continental Congress actually makes their way down to Baltimore, and they meet at Henry Fite's house and tavern, which, if you're familiar with Baltimore, it is where Royal Farms Arena is currently located. There's a plaque on the inside that says this is where Henry Fite's house was, but it was dubbed Congress Hall. And actually, this is in Baltimore is where they hear about George Washington crossing the Delaware. So that big moment actually happens in Baltimore. They hear about it in Baltimore. So I think we are moving on to our next round, or actually our first time out.
Our first guest. Let's meet our first guest. It's mantua maker Nora Worthington.
Good evening. How are you all this evening?
Hi.
Hello. Well, I have an example of a bit of my work. Well, of course, what I wear as part of my advertisement for my work as a mantua maker, or a dressmaker, you might say. And I mostly do women's clothes. Men's clothes, of course, would be built by a tailor, because the tailor would be working in a completely different style than the dressmaker would, or the mantua maker. So we mantua makers will drape the fabric on the body, as you can see here. So if you were interested in having a gown made, you would either have to send me your stays, your form-fitting garment underneath that keeps your shape, and I could put the stays on my form and I could drape something to fit you and suit your body. Or you would come into my shop and I would put the fabric on you so that it was completely and utterly crafted around every single individual part of you. So you can see on I have a different style here on my dress form. This is a dress with a sack back, which means it has these lovely pleats here. This is a bit more of the French fashion. Of course, everything is sewn by hand, and the cost of your garment is going to muchly depend on the fabric you select, because labor in the 18th century is very cheap, unfortunately for my trade. The back of your gown could end up being like mine, which is an English back gown. And I've also got a bit of a polonaise going on here, which means that the skirt's been tucked up. So those are just a few of the choices you might have should you see your local mantua maker.
Very good. Thank you, Nora. Let's see if we have any questions for Nora or about colonial clothing from our audience. Someone asked, Lisa asked what year that was, but I'm not sure what she's referring to. If she wants to pop back in the Q&A and clarify.
The gown that I'm wearing this evening is from the 1770s, but obviously because fabric is so expensive, we're going to be remaking our clothes. And so you may have a gown, there's one in the collection of the Maryland Historical Society, where the fabric is actually from the 1760s, and it's been restyled multiple times all the way up through the 1840s. So just by making minor adjustments or taking things apart and putting them back together again, you may have fabric that's quite old appearing in a much later garment. But the fashions that I'm wearing this evening are more from the 1770s, the Revolutionary War era.
I see. So it is a common practice in the colonial era to reuse clothing and fabric, and that continues on throughout history, doesn't it? Does it not?
It does. It does. I think once we have the huge explosion of cotton fabrics in the United States, once those become more cheaply available, then I think fabric becomes more disposable. Although that changes again during the Depression, as we know from the feed sack dresses. But the expense of your fabric is really, there's no manufacturing of fabric in the United States except for rough fabrics that would be used for enslaved people, indentured servants, working class people. Although it does during the Revolution become a badge of honor to wear homespun. Certainly Benjamin Franklin's famous for appearing in Paris in homespun fabrics, just as a sort of patriotic demonstration that you don't want to wear the fabrics that have been imported from England.
Mm. And we're about the choices of fabrics. About how many? Charles is asking about how many choices of fabric were there in the 1700s?
Well, because we're a British, before we're our own independent country, we're a British colony, and the British have their fingers in many, many countries of the world. It's very much a global market, and therefore in the colonies you'll be getting silks, you'll be getting cottons from India and Egypt, not from the United States, because the cotton gin hasn't facilitated that here yet. But we would be importing those fabrics. You would have brocades, painted Chinese silks. So if it's a fabric that's made anywhere in the world, the British will find a way to ship it to us so that they can get your money for it.
And lace was imported to the United States, correct? Kimberly is asking that question.
Yes, lace is imported, although there may have been, I think there was some tatting here, but lace making is much more of a trade and craft. So that would be more in the imported range. And then possibly some tatting or crocheted lace might be something that people did domestically in the United States.
I have questions for us tonight, Nora, for you. How long would it take to make a dress? Angela is asking.
It really depends on the fashion of the garment. I've worked in the mantua maker's shop in Colonial Williamsburg, and we have done projects where we've done a dress in a day. So I know it is possible, but that was more than one mantua maker working. I think that it also depends on your trimming. And in a normal circumstance, you would want to have fittings intermediately. But as far as man hours, it's conceivable that between sunup and sundown, you could construct a dress.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. It took me way longer to try to make my colonial vest last year for Colonial Market. It still isn't done. Last question. Mike is asking, how many sets of undergarments would a woman typically own?
Well, it would depend on how much wealth you had, certainly. But it was common for people to have at least several shifts. That's your body linen. That's the layer that you wear against your skin underneath of your stays. And you would have at least several shifts. And we know that from the enumeration of people's laundry lists and things like that. Also, their shifts often would have their initials stitched in the front, cross-stitched in the front, and sometimes there would be a number below that, which would tell us that this was, not shift number 1, shift number 6, shift number 7. So if you look at someone's surviving shift, and of course, because they were worn until they were threadbare, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find underwear from people today being saved in museums. So by looking at the numbers on any that survive, or possibly on laundry lists, upper-class people may have more, certainly, shifts and shirts for the gentleman. That's the body linen for the gentleman. So, of course, if you were having your linen washed, which was not uncommon to send your washing out, then those numbers would help you keep track of what you had and what was supposed to be coming back to you. Actually,
I'm going to one more question because there's several questions, but we're going to squeeze in one more. Nancy is asking in the chat, would a single person make a dress, or would a person make the skirt and another person make the bodice, etc.?
The mantua maker's skill is in being able to drape the fabric on the whole body. And since many times you would have a complete set where the dress fabric and then the petticoat fabric, which is what we might think of as an underskirt, could be out of the same, it would all be done in the same shop. It wouldn't necessarily be considered a specialty that one person did the sleeves and one person did the skirt and someone else might have done the ruffles. Although it is possible that you might have someone who was very good at quilting, and quilting at this time period is often done for your petticoats, for your underskirt, especially for winter skirts. There's a beautiful quilted petticoat in the collection of the Maryland Historical Society that was later made into a cape, but it's a bright pink silk. And so something like that, you may have stitchers who are more adept at those kinds of specialty skills. You also might have people who were better at some of the trim, the handmade trims that you'll see decorating 18th century gowns. But it wasn't a factory system by any stretch of the imagination. Your more common seamstress might do things like hemming and roll hemming, finishing off the very edges of your sleeve ruffles or the edges of your neckerchief or the edges of your cap ruffle. But everyone in the shop would be able to work on the garment all together.
Well, thank you so much, Nora. That was really interesting. And that sets us up for our trivia question, round 2, colonial clothing. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Nora.
Goodbye.
Okay, round 2 of trivia, colonial clothing. The first question. What is the stereotypical men's hat from the colonial era called? A, shako, B, kepi, C, tricorn, D, bowler.
If you were paying attention at the beginning, even last round, a little bit ago, you might know this answer.
Stop giving hints, Alex.
I want everyone to do well. I want everyone to learn stuff.
Let's see, most of everybody said the tricorn, and you are correct. C is the correct answer. The tricorn hat was one of the most fashionable hats worn for men in the 18th century. The tricorn was worn as a civilian dress and as part of a military and naval uniform. Its distinguishing characteristic was a practical one. The turned up portions of the brim formed gutters that directed rainwater away from the wearer's face, depositing most of it over his shoulder. And there's a picture of that. And boom, Alex has a tricorn on now.
I would argue, and so would someone in our comments, that it still is one of the most fashionable hats. I mean, I like to wear this whenever I get a chance. Another interesting thing about it, though, is for military use, as they're carrying their muskets, the hat might interfere with the way they're carrying their muskets. So folding it up allows them to carry it in a easier way without doing any damage to their hat.
Okay. Number 2, how many pieces of clothing would a working woman generally wear in the 18th century? 7, 3, 8, or 11?
If you're listening to Nora, you might have picked up on a couple of things.
Okay, most of you said, let's see. Okay, most of you said 8. There were 8 pieces of clothing. And then 7 was really close behind, but the answer is 11. Women would wear a cap, a shift, stockings, a stay, pockets, under petticoat, outer petticoat, a kerchief, a jacket, an apron, and shoes. That was the norm. There you go. Question 3. What was the purpose of this article of clothing? Is it a shoulder pad, a bum roll, a pocket, or was it used to support the fullness of a skirt?
I know the answer. but I also have it here as well. So,
Are you wearing one right now?
I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the main answer is.
Let's see what everyone said. A pocket. Well, you are right. It is a pocket. A pocket, since gowns did not have pockets, a woman might tie one or a pair of separate pockets around her waist. Pockets were reached through the slits left open in the skirts of the upper petticoat and the gown of the upper petticoat and gown, and used to hold small items. There you go. Question 4. Question 4. What would be the first garment that a woman or child would put on when getting dressed? A shift, an undress, short gown, or a petticoat? Are you wearing this one too, Alec?
No, I'm not wearing any of these.
Well, we are talking about women and children, but
Yeah, it's true.
yeah. Let's see what the audience says about this. A shift. Wow, that is the correct answer. And all of you, 92% of you said shift. The shift was the undermost garment worn by children and women, and it served the same purpose as the man's shirt. Made from various qualities of white linen, it had either a drawstring or plain neck, as well as drawstrings or cuffs at the elbows. It could be plain or lace trimmed. Very good. I think we have one more question for you. This is actually one of my favorite ones. Not about Maryland, but about someone very close. Martha Washington had a very impressive collection of this item of clothing, far above the 18th century norm for women in the colonies or in England. Was it hats, gloves, fans, or shoes? Now, Martha Washington did collect a lot of things, but we're talking about the most phenomenal thing that she has collected, that she collected. Ooh, good. Okay, so we were split. Most of you, 38% said fans. The next was shoes. And shoes is the right answer. Martha Washington had an impressive collection of shoes. An average of 2 pairs of shoes per year have been calculated for an upper class woman in colonial America. Records show that Martha Washington purchased 6 pairs of shoes per year from only 1759 to 1773. And that shoe collection includes pumps, galosh shoes, sandals, and clogs, just to name a few types of shoes that she had. Very fashionable Martha Washington. And that ends round 2 of our trivia.
Our next guest is Art Benser. Welcome to the Tavern, Art. You're here to tell us to talk a little bit about woodworking, right?
I am. How are you today?
Doing great.
Good. Nice to see you, Mario.
Hi, glad to see you too, Art. Thank you so much for joining us. So what are you going to talk to us or show us a little something about woodworking?
Well, yes, I am. One of the things the questions I get most often as a colonial woodworker, our camera's not on, is it? Can you see this?
Yes,
Yeah, we can see it. Just hold it maybe just a little bit higher. Yep, that's good.
Okay, one of the questions I get most often about furniture is, how can I tell how old it is, or how it was made, or what kind of wood is it? And I can always, or I can't always, but what I usually do is try and tell people or show people a few characteristics of how something is made. Because you can tell how old it is by the selection of woods, and by the style, and by the methods of construction. And this drawer here is a nice example. This is an early 1800s piece. And one of the first things that we can see is that we have nice dovetails on the side of it. And dovetails are what join the two pieces of wood together. I have a little example right here of how dovetails go together. And they call them a dovetail because it kind of looks like a dove, the way the wings would go out. And they hold very, very well together. I mean, you can't pull them apart in this plane here. And that's the way the wood would, that's the way the drawer would work. So if you try to pull it apart, it won't come apart in a drawer. So dovetails are very important. And they're fairly simple to make. You would lay it out with a marking gauge, and it's just a little sharp edge, and you would set it to how wide you want it to be, and you'd run it down a piece of wood, and it'd put a little line on it, and the little line would be your guide as to A, how far down to saw to make the dovetails, and the second thing it would do would be when you drew it down here, it would score the wood, and it would kind of like pre-cut it a little bit so that you would have a place to put your chisel to make it. And you would also use a dovetail saw with a very, very fine teeth. And if you look at it, it has almost no what they call set. So it cuts a very fine line. And when you make the pieces fit together, it's not sloppy, it's very tight. So that's one way, or one of the things. You have that back here, please. Thank you. Okay, so dovetails are part of it. And if you can look, I can't really tell too much here, but you can see the bottom of this has where it comes in here just a little bit to hold it in place. And again, you can't really tell too much on this, but it has a bit of a taper to it, which is called a chamfer. And the chamfer is just a little tapered edge here. And that does a couple things. It allows you to have the most thickness of the wood. This is the most thickness of the wood where you need the strength. And then this taper here will go into the side of your drawer and won't be a big area in there to weaken the drawer. And another thing that you can tell, and you have to take a word for this one, is that if you run your hand across the drawer, you can feel a little bit of a wave to it. And that little wave is where it was hand planed. And they would rough it out real quickly with a plane that was fairly deeply set and would just get it down to a dimension. And then after that, on your finished side, where your clothing would be, that is smoothed out quite a bit so that it won't bother your clothes. And knobs on furniture, depending upon the style and the age and whether the piece of furniture is being made. It doesn't matter whether it's a cased piece of furniture or anything. Quite often there are two different ways a piece of furniture can be made, and it depends upon the market. If the market is a rural market, then it'll be made the same style as an upscale market, but it'll be using different woods, and it'll be using different fasteners and different hardware. This was actually a fairly rural piece, and the little knobs screw in. Got a little screw on there, a little wooden screw, which a cabinet maker would have the ability to make, and he wouldn't have to go out and buy hardware. So that would save on cost for everybody. If it was a fancier piece, then it would have a piece of brass hardware. Now this one here, you notice, well, maybe you may notice it, but it is, anyway, this one is a veneered piece. And people sometimes equate veneer with a lesser quality piece of furniture, and that is not the case. In the modern times, 1920s and so, that might have been true to say, but in the day, back in the day, a veneered piece of furniture was actually a better piece of furniture because you could take a thin piece of wood or take a piece of wood and thin it down and get a prettier cut of wood on it than you would have otherwise, and it'll be more stable.
All right, so you're telling me when someone asks you how you can tell how old a piece of furniture is, you look at the fittings, like the drawer and like the dovetails, like you feel it to see if it's planed. And there's no, so as far as like the hardware is concerned, there's no nails. Does anyone do we use nails in furniture in the colonial era? And Carol is from our audience is asking about metal screws as well. Is everything wood, or what's?
You'll find very few mechanical fasteners. You will find nails on this drawer here. There are two little nails, very small nails, and all they do is keep this drawer bottom from coming out. Other than that, there are no nails. It's all joinery and glue. As far as screws are concerned, again, you'll see very, very few. And you might see screws to hold a tabletop on, and that'd probably be the only place you would see screws. And if you find an excess number of screws, they were put there by Uncle Joe sometimes later on.
So with the
Go ahead.
With the keyhole, so someone asked about the keyhole. Would the carpenter have that? Would they make that, or would they buy that?
That could be either way. This one here has a little brass scutcheon that is inset into it. It's kind of hard doing all this, but there it is, a little brass scutcheon, and that would be something that the cabinet maker would have to buy. A lot of times they didn't even have a scutcheon on them. Depends upon what the market was. If the market really wanted something really fancy, then you have something fancy. You know, it all depends on what you want to pay for. But they had brass scutcheons. They had wooden scutcheons. The cabinet makers sometimes would make wooden scutcheons, or if he wanted to improvise on his own, and I've done this myself on things, is out of a contrasting wood, he'll make a little scutcheon in a diamond shape or some other shape that would, like I said, be of a contrasting wood, but the cabinet maker wouldn't have to pay any money for it. It'd just be time.
And talking about the types of wood, Judith is asking what were the most common types of wood in the colonial period and in Maryland that were used. And also Charles asked the question, and I am too, how did you make glue and what type of glue was used?
Okay, the woods, for the most part, were what was around. And walnut was a very popular wood for furniture. Poplar and pine were good woods for furniture. See an awful lot of poplar and pine furniture in rural settings and country settings. If it's a piece for a big city, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, around, that could very well be made out of mahogany, which would be imported. And mahogany was a very popular wood because it was easy to carve. It's not a very good wood structurally, but it was easy to carve. So it's fancier wood and very straight grained. And glue, they didn't use Elmer's. We use Elmer's today because it's so good. But back then we had hide glue. And the old saying about taking old paint to the glue factory was pretty much the norm. It would take animals of all sorts and you would render them down, mainly the hooves and things like this. And you would make a hide glue, and you would end up with getting, usually get some sort of a powder, or get the glue itself, and you would mix it up and heat it up, And it works very well as long as it doesn't get wet. If it gets wet, all bets are off.
So if a carpenter is going to make a chest of drawers during the colonial time, how long might it take? What would they charge? Obviously, it varied depending on the individual, but is there kind of like an average cost in time?
Yeah, Christopher is asking that in our Q&A.
Okay, back in the day, the trades were broken down. Well, not broken down, but were just like today. You have, if you take a car to a shop, you have people that work on engines, you have people work on transmissions, you have people that do body work, you have people do all sorts of different trades in the industry. Back then you had case makers, which would make anything that had was a case piece, a chest or a dresser or something like that. And then you had chair makers and people that did different trades. But as far as how long it would take, that would kind of depend upon I guess how fancy or what you wanted to make it, or what the quality were you going to get. But I would imagine that a good cabinet maker, he can make an average piece of furniture in a period of a week.
And what we have one more question, but before I ask Dorothy's question, what is the most expensive piece of furniture that a cabinet maker would make normally?
I would say it has to be something like a really fancy secretary desk or a really fancy high boy.
What is that?
And high boy would be 2 pieces.
Oh, I see. Like a that would
Chest on chest. Chest on chest.
Got it. What about beds? Cabinet maker make a bed though?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
There are 2 different trades. There's a cabinet maker and there's a carpenter. So the cabinet makers would make a bed. Carpenter would build your house to put it in.
I'd rather have the cabinet maker. There'd be more storage.
Okay, last question. Dorothy is asking how, please explain how veneer is more stable.
Yes, it is. And veneer, if you take a piece of wood, if you have it like a tabletop, and wood will naturally warp. But if you join woods together so the growth rings are alternating, then it won't warp as badly, but it may not look as good. So if you put veneer over top of it, which is fairly thinly cut, and that was a real trade to do that, and glue it on there, then it makes the piece much more stable and decorative. So the veneered piece of furniture back in the day was a much more expensive piece of furniture.
Mm-hmm. I was saying is that this is all very fascinating. We have a lot of furniture at the Maryland Historical Society, whole floor, in fact, plus more not seen, as a lot of you may know. So it's really interesting to talk about furniture. So thank you so much, Art, for joining us and answering these questions. Thank you so much. And that
My pleasure.
Thank you. And that leads us to our round 3, which is colonial trades.
All right. So let's get started. Which of the following occupations specialized in making barrels? Was it A, a wheelwright, B, a cooper, C, a carpenter, or D, a blacksmith?
I think most people are going to know this answer. I think so.
I think so too. All right.
Yeah.
And with 96% of the vote, the correct answer is cooper. So technically, a barrel maker is only one part of what a cooper does. They can make buckets, tubs, basically anything that you need to carry something in. Interesting though, they have to have a background in smithing and blacksmithing. But everything they make is referred to as cooperage. During colonial times, barrels were necessary to ship items across the ocean, carry supplies for a marching army, and especially in your tavern, store alcohol. Many attribute the title of cooper as stemming from the Latin word for vat, which is coupa. Also, my Latin is terrible, so if I mess that up, I apologize. All right. So, question number 2. Which of these printers was the first to print a copy of the Declaration of Independence that included the signers' names? Was it A, John Dunlap, B, Ezekiel Russell, C, Mary Catherine Goddard, or D, Benjamin Franklin?
I really want to know. It will be very interesting to see.
This is my favorite one.
I think so. This is one of my favorite. Very local person.
Don't give anything away. All right. With most of the vote, 31%, Mary Catherine Goddard. 29% was Benjamin Franklin, and the correct answer is Mary Catherine Goddard. She is incredibly cool and fascinating. So she was born in New England. She moves to Maryland in 1774 to take over the printing of the Maryland Journal from her brother. When the Declaration of Independence is passed, she offered up her print shop to print copies, putting herself at risk. While others, I believe John Dunlap was the first to print the Declaration of Independence, Mary Catherine Goddard is the first to print the signers' names. So she's actually putting all the names out there. What's actually even cooler about her is she was the first postmistress of Baltimore for almost 14 years. And she was ousted because the Postmaster General didn't think a woman could be a postmistress, and over 200 people actually signed a petition to get her reinstated. Unfortunately, it failed, but she is such a cool person, has such a great story. And we actually have a Mary Catherine Goddard Declaration of Independence in our collection. And I believe there might be one at the Annapolis State House. I'm not 100% sure those, but we do have one. All right. So if a colonial tradesperson worked with oakum and pitch, what would be their industry? Was it A, shipbuilding, B, printing, C, tobacco farming, or D, smithing? You have to know your colonial trades to get this one.
I think you could probably figure this one out, but
we'll just have to see.
I don't want to say anymore.
All right. And with 87% of the vote, you all got it right. This round's too easy. It is shipbuilding. I should have made this harder. I had some harder ones I could have done. But maritime workers would work with oakum and pitch. Oakum is used up rope that is covered in tar, so it would have come from a ship that where it would have been used. And pitch is basically just tar. You would use the oakum. You would put the oakum in the boards, in between the boards of a ship, put pitch over it, and it would make it watertight. During the American Revolution, and in 1776, Maryland's shipbuilding made up 9% of the total American shipping. At the end of 1775, Congress authorized 13 frigates. One of the vessels was the Virginia, and it was made by George Wells in Fells Point. Along the Eastern Shore, during the Revolutionary War, you have shipbuilders who are building barges to kind of protect themselves from the British Navy. And so shipbuilding is a really important industry in Maryland. It's going to be even more important, or not even more important, but it's going to become more famous. I can't do math, but in 1812, I was going to try and do the math between that time, but I can't do that. Let's just go to the next question.
You're a historian.
I know. I don't have to do all right. Using the forced labor of enslaved individuals, Maryland became incredibly wealthy due to which crop? Was it A, cotton, B, tobacco, C, oysters, or D, sugar?
What are you drinking, by the way, Alex? Are you drinking? What do you?
I wish it was something fun. It's just water.
Just water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ditto here. We have to work.
We have to work. All right. So with 84% of the vote, most people said B, tobacco. Maryland was a slave state. Slavery in Maryland started around the 1650s, 1660s, and enslaved individuals were working on the tobacco plantations along the Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland. By the 1670s, the Chesapeake region is exporting around 10 million pounds of tobacco a year to England. And interesting thing is tobacco's plantations are also the reason that the Eastern Shore is so spread out. Because people could put plantations along rivers and coast, they didn't need major cities to have as trading ports because ships could just pull right into the plantation. So that's why there are no major markets or towns that are built up on the Eastern Shore around that time. They will be built up, but during the colonial time, there's no reason to have a major market town. All right, final question. I feel like I made this one too easy.
Oh, I was going to say that slavery, the first slaves arrived in Maryland in 1650. And by 1690, they surpassed the number of servants that we had.
Right.
Okay. Last question, right?
Yeah. During the American Revolution, these individuals followed the Continental Army and sold items that were otherwise unavailable. What were they called? A, peddlers, B, supply merchants, C, quartermasters, or D, sutlers? I'll say this was an easy round and just give everyone a break.
Tom and Kathleen out there are saying that we actually should be allowed to drink just for this event. Right, Tom and Kathleen, we really should, but it was probably a matter of being lazy on my part about Alex.
65% of the vote, most people said sutlers. The next option, the next highest was A, peddlers. So sutlers sold items such as food, tobacco, clothing, supplies, and especially liquor. Like liquor was a big thing that they sold. Congress actually licensed sutlers to sell to the Continental Army, and they were under the control of the Army. And so the soldiers could only buy from permitted sutlers. But Washington, within 10 days of being commander-in-chief, restricted access to sutlers because he said, his quote, they had been so daring as to supply the soldiers with immoderate quantities of rum. This is in Boston. Sutlers are just supplying them with rum. Washington doesn't like that.
Before we switch over really quickly to our last time out, I have someone's asking, Carla is asking if our bookstore at Maryland Historical Society has a book about Goddard, about Catherine Goddard. I don't believe we do. She might, right, Alex? She might, I'm not aware of a book that she comes up in that we have either.
There is a book about colonial printers that I believe she comes up in, though I don't know off the top of my head what it's called, but there is a book about colonial printers during this time period.
In our bookstore?
I don't know if it's in our bookstore, but you can definitely find it,
yeah,
online somewhere.
There definitely is information about her online. So hope that helps.
Someone also asked where does pitch come from. It's basically tar. So it was going to be, I actually don't know where tar comes from, but it was basically where the same place you get tar.
Okay.
Oh, someone says pantries. Thank you.
Our final guest in our Tavern night is Joyce White. She is a local food historian from Annapolis. Welcome, Joyce. Oh, I think you're oh, there you go. You're good.
Am I on now?
Yes, we hear you fine and clear. Thank you so
I'm
much.
more comfortable in the 18th century.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to be talking to you about Colonial Maryland foodways. We're talking about taverns tonight, so I thought I'd talk about one product that would have been very commonly found in a tavern and one product that would have been less common, although definitely available. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is Indian corn. And Indian corn was the cereal crop that was the most commonly grown in tobacco growing colonies. And that's because it really worked very well with the tobacco economy. And there was a lot of reasons for that. Tobacco is very labor intensive, so you wanted to have a crop that was not labor intensive. And corn is really great because one man could clear enough land to feed his family with corn for a year. And the reason that's true is because the trees did not have to be removed. All he had to do was girdle the trees, meaning kill them by kind of cutting into them to cut off the supply of sap going up into the trees so that the leaves couldn't be produced. And that's all he had to do so that enough sun could come down. The other thing about corn is that it's wind pollinated, meaning that though it can be grown in rows, and it is now, back then you really didn't have to. It actually did really well when you grew it in groupings or clumps. So corn hills were the thing that the Native Americans taught the settlers to grow, because what you want to happen is you want the wind to blow the pollen from the tassels, which are the male part of the corn, onto the silks, which is the female part of the corn. So if your plants are too far apart, that's not really good. If the wind just tends to blow in one direction, that's not really good. So if you have them sort of grouped together in a hill in a small clump of about 3 to 4 stalks, that's really going to optimize the amount of pollination that will happen. So growing the corn in hills scattered around essentially the forest where the trees have just been girdled is perfect. The other thing is that because tobacco and things like wheat, even though they did grow wheat, they just grow it in very small quantities, they tend to compete at harvest time, whereas Indian corn can wait until that tobacco harvest is brought in. And it actually improves. The longer it sits in the field, it will cure, it will dry, so that when you go to store it, it won't mold. So it's really, really great. Now we want to talk about one of the ways that they processed corn early on. And again, the Native American Indians taught the settlers to make what they called omene, or what we would call hominy. And this is hominy. This is a dried corn product that essentially is created by boiling the corn in water until the outer jacket of each kernel, or the husks, falls off and will rise to the surface, and then you can skim it off. Then you drain it, you lay the remaining corn kernels just on mats in the sun to dry, and you've got this product, which is what we would call great hominy or big hominy. And here is a recipe I made, which is on my blog, for what we call big hominy, and it's from the Maryland's Way cookbook, the Hammond Harvard House cookbook. And you basically just cook this for a very long period of time. Don't worry, I have an Instant Pot version online for you to follow. And you cook it until it's soft. After soaking it for 24 hours, you put it in the Instant Pot, you cook it, and then you mix in butter and cream or milk. You could even add other things. One of the more commonly used ways for the working class people was to mix this with whatever meat you had, which was normally pork. Salt pork, just any kind of bacon or sausage, that kind of thing. And they called it hog and hominy. So that's one version of hominy. The other version that you can buy in your grocery stores today in Maryland is Mrs. Manning's hominy. And this is steam peeled. And it comes out like cranberry sauce, it comes out in a big congealed mass that you would have to then break apart. I like the fresh, which I buy at my Amish market in Annapolis. But this is a great product too. It just has a different taste, and it's got a more pronounced taste. This is blander. So these are definitely something that a tavern keeper could have fed you to fill you up. It was cheap, it was available, it was a no-brainer for a tavern keeper. The other product I want to talk to you about today is something that was definitely available, because I've seen advertisements for it in Maryland Gazette from the 18th century, is this product called tamarind. And these are tamarind pods. If you can see them, they don't look very appetizing. You would certainly not eat them in this state. What you would do is you would break them up. You'd break this outer husk off, and then you would pull these pods out, and there are seeds inside of there. You basically would just process it by soaking it in boiling water, and then pull it out and kind of separate the pulp from the stringy stuff and the seeds and all that. And then what you would get is this stuff, which is a paste. And you can buy this online. Yeah. So what is tamarind? Tamarind is is a product. It comes from an evergreen tree from Africa that made its way over to India and other parts of Asia in the prehistoric days. If you've ever gone to an Indian restaurant or ever had a Thai curry, you've had tamarind and you probably didn't know it. It's in a lot of curries. And it's also a key ingredient in Worcestershire sauce, which you probably didn't know. Tamarind has a very acidic nature to it, so you definitely need to mix it in with other things. Sugar being, obviously an important one that would work, especially to make what we call this tamarind drink or tamarind water. There are a lot of recipes, not just in Maryland, but several in Maryland, for tamarind waters, and they would be given to people who were sick, or you could just drink it. It's very refreshing. It has a high rate of vitamin C in it, so I could see why it would have been given to sick people. And but you also see recipes going back to the 19th century for curries in Maryland and in other parts of British North America with tamarind in it. So it's definitely an important product. Chutneys as well. So not quite as common, very common. According to food historian, another Maryland food historian, Michael Twitty, he says he conjectures that enslaved Afro-Marylanders possibly pooled their money together, and when they went into a market town like Annapolis, they may have been able to purchase tamarinds there and bring them back home to share amongst their family. So it's definitely an important part of Maryland's history, although definitely more, unusual. It's probably something you wouldn't associate with colonial Maryland. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, put them in the Q&A box. We have at least a couple of them for you already.
Great.
The tamarind was brought over. It was an influence of the slaves that came to the colonies, correct?
I'm not sure if it was an influence from because it was something the enslaved people wanted, or more accurately, it was probably because the British had occupied India, and when they returned home to Britain, they brought with them a taste for Indian food, Indian cuisines. Curry powder, for instance, is a British interpretation of what an Indian curry should taste like. Well, if you went to India and asked for curry powder in the way that we know it, they would look at you like you were crazy. So I think this is one of those things that was imported into Britain and then eventually crossed the Atlantic and made it to British North America because the British who occupied India liked it and wanted to make it part of their cuisine for their curries.
So we have one question from Troy, who he wanted to know, how did the colonial diet shift during and after the American Revolution, like shift from British cuisine? Was there a change, or did it just kind of stay the same, or did it, like the colonies have their own cuisine?
The cuisine was heavily influenced by, the Maryland cuisine, I should say, was heavily influenced by the British typical cuisines. However, there was a huge African American influence as well. When you think about many of the great houses in Maryland, like Riversdale, Hammond Harwood House, the Pecos House, all these large houses, who was doing the cooking? The cooking was done generally by enslaved Afro-Marylanders who were bringing sort of their own take on recipes. You have to understand, even printed recipe books back then were not very specific. They were generally what we call aides memoire. They were just kind of suggestions as to how you would make something, and then you had to fill in the gaps. So, an African-American cook would definitely add their take on the recipe. Of course, they were trying to please their master and mistress, but they definitely had a large influence into what we would now consider historical Maryland foodways. And of course, Native American products also played a big part, like hominy, like corn.
It's just super interesting. Food is it's just really interesting. And I don't think we think about, I don't know, maybe I don't think about it the way that, think about it in this way. It's really fascinating. we're going to ask one more question for you so we can finish our last round. Mike from Southern Maryland is asking, what was the most commonly used meat in colonial times?
So there's a sort of controversy between, was it beef or was it pork? Definitely the poorer you were, the more pork you were eating, but you definitely wanted to eat more beef. Beef was a very aspirational food. And the wealthier you were, the more often you ate a variety of beef. And I'm not talking about filet or tenderloin or, you know, New York strip or anything like that. I'm talking about all the parts of beef, and veal was very popular too. So they ate things that we would not consider eating, like they ate calf's head. I've used a calf's head to make a mock turtle soup, very common dish. They ate the tripe, the intestines. They ate the sweetbreads, which is a gland. They ate the heart, the liver, the lungs, or what they would call the pertinences. And they did that for all animals, not just for beef. If you ever heard the expression to eat humble pie, that actually comes from eating the innards of a deer, which were called the umbles. So the lower classes would have just the very scrappy part of the food, of those organs that didn't get served up to the wealthy people, and they would put it in a pie, and they would call that umble pie. So they pretty much ate everything. Beef was definitely the one that they wanted to eat.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Joyce.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joyce. We really enjoy having you as usual. So hopefully we'll see you again. And thanks a lot for being a part of our tavern. We'll see you later.
Thanks so much.
That leads us into our final round of Colonial Trivia. What is that, Alex?
It is Colonial Foodways, and I'm starting to get hungry.
Me too, actually. Okay, let's wrap this trivia up with Colonial Foodways. 5 questions. Ready to go? I tried to make these questions a little bit hard, so let's see how we did. What was not a phrase used in Colonial Maryland for being drunk? She's rocky, you see 2 moons, you're fuddled, or you're popped. Which one was not a phrase used for being drunk in colonial times?
I don't know. I mean, if you're drunk, you're not hearing what people are calling you.
I haven't heard of any of these before. Do you call anybody, your friends, any of these things?
I don't.
Okay, a lot of people said popped was not a term used, and you are correct. Popped was not. Our founding father, Benjamin Franklin, first published his Drinker's Dictionary in 1737, which he listed a glossary of phrases early Americans used for being drunk. There were 228 common terms for being intoxicated, to be exact.
Leave it up to Ben Franklin for publishing a Drinker's Dictionary. I mean, of all people, Ben Franklin is going to be the one who does that.
I wonder how much he drank.
Probably a lot.
Okay. Our next question. When would a colonial pass glass be used? While gathering honey, on baking days, while roasting meats, or during a social gathering? Pass glass. Do you have a pass glass, Alex?
I don't even know what it is, so I might, I may not, who knows?
I guess we'll have to see what the answer is.
Yeah. Curious other people know what it is.
Oh, darn. I thought I would really stump everyone. Yes, 74% said during a social gathering. And yes, you are correct. A pass glass is a tall drinking glass, elaborately decorated and used to serve wine and other alcoholic beverages as entertainment for guests or the elite. And a pass glass was intended to be shared and sometimes was passed among several drinkers. sounding a little familiar. The horizontal rings are said to indicate the amount to be drunk precisely by each person. And thus, we have evidence that it was used as a drinking game. And what you are looking at right now are a couple of examples of past glasses and one painting that also has a past glass in it. Thus, you can see the yellow arrow. So,
I'm going to agree with Mike that we should not use a past glass right now.
Okay, number 3. Among fermented brews, what was the most popular in an 18th century tavern? Beer, hard cider, wine, small beer. I would like to know how many of you out there are drinking a fermented brew right now.
Yeah. If I was at a tavern right now, I might be drinking
I'm
one.
surprised you're not drinking right now.
I have to say somewhat presentable.
Okay, most 57, almost over half of you said hard cider. The answer is yes, hard cider. Although distilled liquids, although distilled liquors such as whiskey, rum, gin, and brandy were beverages of choice, which averaged in the colonial times about 45% alcohol for the alcohol content. Hard cider, with an alcohol content about 10% usually, was enjoyed and it was extremely popular. Wine was rarely favorable. Just before the revolution, people consumed an average of only 1/10 of a gallon per year. Beer lagged behind other choices, and the small beer, which is a simple homebrewed version that contained less than 1% alcohol, followed. The general rule when it came to alcoholic beverages, water, bad, alcohol, good. Not just for a substitute for unsafe water, but because they were thought that it was nutritious and healthful. In fact, it was a cure for a broken leg, snake bites. It was given to women in labor and also to cure scurvy, were just some of the many, many reasons to drink alcohol in the 18th century.
I mean, if I know anything about alcohol, it's probably led to a lot more broken legs than it has cured.
Okay, according to archaeological analysis of cooking equipment, I had to. In southern Maryland in the early 18th century, how many households had the iron pots necessary to prepare food by braising or boiling? 99%, 65%, 50%, or less than 5?
Those things are heavy. They're good if you want to do a quick workout. They have a handle. You just hold them, do some squats.
They are. Alex and I have 3 iron pots at the museum that we use for touching, and they are very heavy.
They're in our offices too.
Okay, well, 33% of you said 50%. The answer is 99%. So according to archaeological evidence, most families were overwhelmingly dependent on braised meats, stews, and boiled dishes. 63% could fry, 50% could roast their meats. So this indicates that most women only own utensils to prepare in one or two ways, to prepare food in one or two ways. Variety was not a widespread characteristic of Chesapeake cuisine in the early 18th century. You would probably like that, actually, Alex, because
I would. An interesting thing about those, I'm going to throw out a random fact. The first things to go when an army was marching was their iron pots. There was one person who was supposed to carry it. They would rotate a mess with 6 people. The first thing to go if they were going on a big march, that iron pot was going to be dumped.
And thanks, Mike, she's raising our glasses to me and Alex. I appreciate that. Okay, last and final question of our tavern trivia for tonight. So just hang in there a couple more minutes. This beneficial creature was not native to the colonies until it was imported in 1622. Was it the ladybug, the butterfly, honeybee, or the cicada?
If it's anything, a cicada, I hope it's not imported. Get deaf walking outside at night.
Creatures, well, they probably all insects are. Okay, let's see what everyone said. Honeybee, yes, you are correct. The first bees in the colonies arrived and came up the James River in 1622 and were offloaded at Hopewell, Virginia. They just took over and populated the country with bees. They multiplied so fast, there were no honeybees in North America until the colonists brought them over in 1622. But to wrap up this question, we actually have a video from one of our guests that we've worked with before, April Inlow-Smith.
It's no surprise that gardens were important to colonial America. From formal gardens to family farms and even city yards, what you grew was important. You grew plants for yourself and beneficial creatures. It made sense to grow sunflowers and bee balm to attract birds and bees. Birds ate all the bugs that were harmful to your crops, and without the pollination of bees, we would have no crops at all. Many varieties of flowers kept these amazing insects happy, and the same holds true today. One just can't say enough about the birds and the bees.
That's my favorite line. Thank you so much, April, for providing that. We'll make sure we send that link out when we send an email to everyone who participated today.
Have you ever tried to render anything from 1700s? It takes a long time.
So we want to thank you for joining us today. I hope that you fared well in the trivia game tonight and you learned a lot of things about colonial history. It's time to close up our tavern for this year. Hopefully we'll see you next year in person, but we would like to give a huge thank you to many, many of the living historians who helped us make this program possible. And as always, they share their knowledge and enthusiasm for colonial history with all of us. So good night, everyone, and cheers.
Moves got up with his risible fizz, and swore with Apollo he cheerfully joined the